Well, hello there again, my friends. This will be a second video of the day. I had a couple of topics I hadn't discussed yet and a couple of notes that I felt I had to cover. And maybe it's kind of coincidental that today I'm going to talk about this because actually it happens on the same day as I don't want to date my video because I usually want to talk about a topic that can be watched a year from now and have the same discussion. I don't talk about the news, but what happened in Texas with the Uvalde school, I don't want to even talk about it because my video will get instantly not just demonetized. I don't make any money off this video anyway, but I am going to be talking about firearms, and I think that's an important topic when we look at what happened. They released the video the other day of and this is before I planned on making this video, of the police standing in the hallway of the school for over an hour before they entered the classroom. And I don't want to get into that discussion on this video, even though I'm sure somebody's already typing about it. It angered me when I watched the video. I thought, here's all these people who are claimed to be these brave, public servants sitting around for an hour while, children. I mean, it was phenomenally ignorant for all those people not to break rank and just go do it and get in there and deal with it. To me, I wasn't surprised, and that was the scary thing. That was the scary thing. That I didn't think that it was that big of a fucking surprise. I thought, well, yep, that's what cops do. They put themselves first and protect themselves. They'll set up barricades instead of going in. They talk about being brave, and some are, of course. But the point is, they're not, they will use firepower when they don't feel like they have a threat against them. But you should, everyone's seen the firepower they will use even when they assume there's a threat. So imagine what happens when there's a school involved and they do nothing. It amazed me. But at the same time, not at all. But the question that I was going to ask in this video was, is an armed society a polite society? That was a question that I've been asking myself for a long time because I've heard that before. It's a saying, it's a term, an armed society is a polite society. And I thought about what happened in the past. What about back in the Wild West? People had to turn in their guns in town, even back then. And different cities have different ordinances, and we've seen crime rates go down, things like that. All this is true, but guns have always gone up. There's always more every year, even when crime rates go down. The issue has to do more with the society than the firearms themselves. But in America, it's such a controversial topic we can't even talk about it. I believe a gun is a tool. I was taught this from my father. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War II. My father joined the Army when he was 18 and was sent to Vietnam. He was stationed at a place called Cam Bay, and I don't know much about it. I've tried to find info, and I think, that pretty messed him up pretty bad mentally. And even then, he had learned how to respect a firearm. He shot when he was younger, I think, with his dad too. So when I was about, 9, 10 years old, he took me out to shoot, and my brother later on, and taught me how to shoot a .303, which is a British rifle that he'd actually inherited from his father. He'd taken it after World War II, and he had a .32 pistol that his dad had taken off a dead German soldier. So it was pretty real, And he took us out there, and I remember pulling up that .303 and taking my first shot and blowing a soda can completely in half, and that feeling. of just like, yeah, that was awesome, and since then I've actually, always had a reverence for firearms and their power, but at the same time have never had the inkling to harm anyone or to use one against anyone. I've never had, even back in school, when I was through junior high or high school, I got picked on all the time. Never had the idea to use a firearm. It wasn't even interesting to me. I wouldn't want to harm other people. What happened? And when did that become an issue? It was when the news started covering these things. It's a mass psychosis that so many people, so many young men are falling into, to believe that they're going to be infamous and go down in history. They think they're depressed. They think life's so bad, not realizing everybody else has been through the same shit. But that's not what I was taught. With firearms, I was taught to respect it, never harm another soul. But there's another side to this. I was also taught if you feel threatened by another person, you should have the right to defend yourself. And this is where it gets very controversial. When is violence legit? And I'm going to say that when somebody feels threatened physically by another person who has a firearm, they should have a right to respond with their own. That's pretty simple, but it seems to be very complicated within the legal system. We don't have the choice in all states and all places to just use a firearm or carry one if we want to. Then there's also the other issues with felons not being able to have a firearm. Many people applaud that. But myself, I'm a felon from mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, like 10 years ago. I might be able to get it expunged, but the point being that not all felons have committed a horrible crime. But when you live in a dangerous part of town, I have no interest in carrying. That's not my thing. I've got a taser if I need it, and I don't want to harm people. I just want to be able to protect myself. But let's move from... When we talk about firearms, we kind of get this illusion that the people, that people just can't handle it. They can't handle having firearms. The truth is, a majority of people will never do any harm with what they, the firearms they own. But I thought about who chooses to shoot, which types of people, and why. But then I thought about the nukes. Excuse me. There have been many times through history when people have had access to the nuke button and almost started a war. It's not that they almost started it, but rather they were commanded to launch, but they didn't because they knew better. Because the average person doesn't want to die, and they don't want to cause death to others. When you think that you need to protect yourself, this is when it gets nasty. You go to war, you think that you're protecting your country. It doesn't turn out to be what you thought it was. But the danger of firearms, the real danger, lies in a failed state. And that's what I think that most people are afraid of, including the U.S. government. In other countries, when those states start to fail, whether it's caused by external or internal circumstances, the damage that is done is so severe that people end up taking firearms to protect themselves, but a lot of them form into mobs and they go out and they take from others. It's just how it works. All failed states have mobs of people who try to exploit local communities. It's horrendous. In the U.S., everyone has a firearm, pretty much. There's more than people. So, in the end, nobody's going to be exploiting people as long as they can protect themselves. But the U.S. could be a failed state, and that's a very possible thing. It could happen overnight. So, as an American, being able to protect yourself, I think, is a pretty important thing. being able to preserve the stability of your own country is one thing, but your own community, your own home, that's another story. And I remember hearing this, the old stupid saying back in the 80s and 90s, freedom isn't free. And I thought about how dumb that sounded. And I thought, it's true. I could never really deny it. Freedom is not free. It's it requires the sacrifice of people who want to preserve that freedom, not just for themselves, but for others, which is why I respect soldiers and people who join the military. It's just unfortunate that a lot of them are sent out to battles they don't need to fight. And I think that's a travesty. But firearms are a major export for America. And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. But to come full circle, I'm shocked that, and what influenced me to actually make this video was the article I'd read about Uvalde said that a lot of parents in the, in the community said they're losing trust in authority. And I said, wow, it took them a while. I've never had trust in authority. I've always had suspicion, but I think that that's coming full circle into the mainstream now. I remember hearing stories of people who said, well, if something ever happened that was really bad, I would just wait for the fire department. Major earthquake, whatever it might be. No, man, you got to bail yourself out. Sometimes it's too big, and you won't ever know if you're not trying to save yourself, which means have some survival food, a little bit of extra water, basic things that most people just take for granted. And I guess that's about it. I think firearms really, I don't think that if we tried to eliminate them or I don't think if we made a law against them, they would disappear by any means. And I also realize, and I hope a lot of other people do that, with 3D printing, now it's pretty much over. You can download plans and print thousands of them. There's no stopping, firearms that are 3D printed. So you pretty much have to live with that and be able to cope with the fact that we live in a different world now. And not everybody wants to do harm, and the ones who do will always find a way. We need to get to the root of that, I guess. I don't know how. You tell me. I gotta go. I'll talk to you next time. Peace out.